Psalm 68 is a long psalm, and as you read it through, you may find yourself singing choruses that you grew up with if you've been in church a while. You may find yourself recognizing verses that are quoted in the New Testament. You may notice that there's a lot of mountain references. It kind of tells the story of how Mount Zion became God's special dwelling place. And, with a map and some Bible tools, it would make a fascinating study. What I want us to notice is something that's a little bit obvious as you start to read it. So let's start to read it and see if it's obvious. It begins like this. God shall arise, his enemies shall be scattered. Those who hate him shall flee before him. As smoke is driven away, so you shall drive them away. As wax melts before the fire, so the wicked shall perish before God. But the righteous shall be glad. They shall exult before God. They shall be jubilant with joy. So we've got this kind of strength of God stuff going on. His power, his might, his strength in the first couple of verses. And yet, the righteous, those who are his, have an alternate response. Okay, so the enemies have every reason to fear. God is terrifyingly powerful. And yet those who are his shall be glad, shall exult, shall be jubilant with joy. It's almost like we're getting two presentations of God in this psalm. And you'll find this in many passages in the Bible where you get the presentation of the greatness of God. And yet when you look more carefully, you can see also the graciousness of God. All right, so you've got his might, but also his meekness. So let's just give some examples of that. It's a long psalm. We can't, of course, cover the whole thing. But notice some of the strength of this language, 7 and 8. O God, when you went out before your people, when you marched through the wilderness, the earth quaked. The heavens poured down rain before God, the one of Sinai, before God, the God of Israel. The earth quaked. That's a overwhelming power. The chariots of God, it says in verse 17, are twice 10,000, thousands upon thousands. The Lord is among them. Sinai is now in the sanctuary. So this theme of kind of mountains and presence of God and so on, that's working its way through. But just the language here, the chariots of God are twice 10,000, thousands upon thousands. Almost feels like they're trying to find the number big enough, which is exactly, of course, what the psalm writer is trying to do. They don't really have the kind of exponential numbering that we have today, so they kind of pile it up like that. Imagine the rumble, the earth quaking with that number of chariots riding through the land. It's really painting a picture of God's might and God's strength. As you come down to the end of the psalm, O kingdoms of the earth, sing to God, sing praises to the Lord, to him who rides in the heavens, the ancient heavens. Behold, he sends out his voice. What's it like? It's a mighty voice. Ascribe power to God, whose majesty is over Israel, whose power is in the skies. Awesome God from the sanctuary. We've got this language here: power, majesty, power, awesome. The God of Israel, he is the one who gives power and strength to his people. Blessed be God. So all the way through, you'll find language of God's might and God's strength and God's awesome power. But notice how at the end here it's saying he is the one who gives power and strength to his people. God is a God of power and strength, but he's a God who generously gives to those who are his. So if we just go back for a moment, some of the language that speaks of God's graciousness, speaks of God's meekness and care and kindness to his own. Father of the fatherless, protector of widows is God in his holy habitation. God settles the solitary in a home. He leads out the prisoners to prosperity, but the rebellious dwell in a parched land. Verse 9, rain in abundance, O God, you shed abroad, you restored your inheritance as it languished. Your flock found a dwelling in it. In your goodness, O God, you provided for the needy. Beautiful language, isn't it? Father of the fatherless, providing for the needy. Blessed be the Lord, verse 19, who daily bears us up. God is our salvation. Our God is a God of salvation, and to God the Lord belong deliverances from death. And then again at the end, verse 35, awesome is God from his sanctuary, the God of Israel. He is the one who gives power and strength to his people. Blessed be God. Have a read through Psalm 68. It's a long one. But as you go through, be noticing on the one hand, the greatness of God is overwhelming. And yet on the other hand, and at the same time, the graciousness of God, his love, his care, it's just astonishing. And so read Psalm 68, share your highlights with others in the comments below, share a verse with somebody over text, speak to somebody and share it with them. Psalm 68 is a real blessing because it shows us the fullness of who God is in his majesty and his might, but also in his meekness, in his strength, and also in the fact that he strengthens us. We've got a great God. We've got a gracious God.